Next on the 5 o'clock report.
How's your morning going?
So far, so good.
We need healthy businesses, small, medium, and large.
We're going to continue to grind and grind and grind. This is a very important law.
This is part of our plan to make sure that we're protecting America.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Kennedy's congressional confrontation. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster.
How's your morning going?
So far, so good.
One of the few lighthearted moments in the U.S. Senate today for Health and Human Services Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy spent a lot of time on the Capitol Hill grill, and things did get heated, especially when Democrats questioned him on his history of questioning vaccines.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those
Anybody
vaccines.
who believes that ought to look at the measles book you wrote.
Countered Kennedy.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science.
No high drama for Commerce Secretary nominee Howard Lutnick.
We need healthy businesses, small, medium, and large, to hire our great American workers to drive our economy. I will dedicate myself to making our government more responsive, working to ensure Americans have the greatest opportunity for success.
Lutnick told senators fears that tariffs might drive up inflation are unfounded. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says they're going to keep plugging away trying to get all the cabinet picks confirmed.
We're going to continue to grind and grind and grind, and we'll do that through the weekend if necessary.
This afternoon, Sean Duffy was sworn in as the new Transportation Secretary. On the immigration front, President Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law today.
This is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together. That's not easy to do. Laken did it.
It's the first legislation Trump has signed since taking office. The key point of it?
That allows authorities who arrest somebody in the country illegally for any reason to hold them to be deported.
That's Fox correspondent Peter Ducey. It's named for a 22-year-old nursing student who was killed by an illegal immigrant in a brutal attack on the University of Georgia campus. Also, the Trump administration has revoked a Biden-era order that extended temporary status to some Venezuelan migrants here illegally.
This is part of our plan to make sure that we're protecting America, keeping it safe again.
That's new Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. The former South Dakota governor was embedded with ICE agents during Tuesday raids, saying those raids by ICE and other law enforcement agencies are picking up, quote, the worst of the worst. Now, it looks like the interest rates you pay are going to stay steady as she goes for now after the Fed wrapped up a meeting without plans to raise or lower them. Business analyst Jill Schlesinger.
A whole lot of nothing at this meeting. They will pause their rate cut campaign and take no action.
The Fed's been manipulating interest rates to try to tame inflation, which has hit everything, it seems, including childcare.
The online agency Care.com says its latest annual survey shows many parents are locked in a downward financial spiral, cutting back spending on essentials, taking on extra work, or even stepping away from their careers just to afford care for their kids.
That's CBS's Vicki Barker. Is it time to make a deal? That's the big question right now in war-weary Ukraine.
A deal that freezes the front line and then protects Ukraine against being invaded again by Russia would probably be accepted by most Ukrainians. But a deal that redraws the map, that rewards Vladimir Putin with parts of Ukraine and then doesn't protect this country, I think many Ukrainians would prefer just to keep fighting.
That's Holly Williams. A spirit of change in the air.
Frontier Airlines has again proposed merging with struggling rival Spirit Airlines, which is in bankruptcy. Spirit executives have rejected the latest proposal, but say they would consider a revised offer.
Matt Piper, it's the second time to the altar for the pair. In 2022, Frontier was outbid by JetBlue, only to have federal regulators ultimately ground that deal over fears it would drive ticket prices skyward. And OpenAI says it's reviewing if Chinese AI startup DeepSeek took data from ChatGPT to build its own new AI assistant. A spokesperson says OpenAI is aware that groups in China use methods like distillation. That's a technique used to transfer a large model's knowledge to a smaller model to replicate American AI models. DeepSeek says its model works at the same level as OpenAI's latest version. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, transgender issues on both sides of the state border. ICE isn't nice when there's too much of it in the wrong place. And we'll hear some professional advice on weathering the winter blues.
It'll be much colder tonight than it was last night, and there'll be some local lake snow and flurries, and any moist surfaces untreated will be freezing. Watch your step. Clouds breaking at times, but there'll be flurries, local lake snows around. A couple 3 inches in some spots, with low temperatures mainly in the teens, but those winds subsiding. Tomorrow, a couple of morning flurries, then a fair amount of sunshine, high in the 30s again. Friday's cloudy with rain, ice, and snow, and temperatures in the 30s to near 40 degrees.
Thank you very much, Kevin Williams. Now checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Transgenderism. It continues to be a tough topic in New York and Pennsylvania. The Elizabethtown Area School District, that's in Lancaster County, PA, has adopted 2 new gender identity policies. The first one restricts preferred pronoun use. The second bans so-called trans athletes from competing in girls' sports. Says this parent.
Biological born males should not be allowed in girls' locker rooms or allowed to participate in women's sports. Please move forward and get these policies in place to protect the children.
Well, the vote was 8-1 in favor of making those changes, the new policy to take effect in March. A so-called transgender runner at the Rochester Institute of Technology made news by easily beating the women in the field in a weekend race in the D3 meet. Women's sports activist Melissa Beatty-Smooth says what Sadie Schreiner, born Camden Schreiner, is doing isn't fair.
To me, it's like common sense. There should not be biological men playing in women's sports. We need everybody to stand up and make sure that this does not continue.
President Trump's latest executive order will ban access to so-called gender-affirming care, such as surgery and chemical blockers, for youths younger than 19, although it is likely to face a court fight. Tragedy amid celebration in Philadelphia following the post-game party in the streets after the Eagles' NFC Championship victory.
18-year-old Tyler Sabapathy was identified as the Temple University freshman that fell after climbing a light pole in Philadelphia during the celebrations that followed the Philadelphia Eagles' victory over the Washington Commanders in last weekend's NFC Championship game.
That's KYW's Nigel Thompson. Video shows the 18-year-old, a Toronto native who was on Temple's club gymnastics team, climbing about 3/4 of the way up a light pole before losing his grip and falling. Cold weather, it's causing Lake Erie to freeze up pretty solid now. Good news for those weary of the heavy lake snow that's fueled by those open waters. Not so good, perhaps, for lakeshore residents in places like Hamburg, New York. Kevin Hoke, for example, owns Hoke's Lakeshore Restaurant, often the scene of some heavy ice buildup, and he's worried about potential flooding when the temperatures rise.
I think this is the first time the Lake Erie has frozen in quite some time now. It looks like the moon out there right now. If it just stays like that, we're good, but you just never know.
Ice that's formed in the Allegheny River in western Pennsylvania is also raising some flooding concerns. Rain and above normal temperatures in the coming days could increase the potential for ice jam flooding. Last week's frigid cold caused 3 to 6 inches of ice to form on the Allegheny. That's something the river hasn't seen in at least 7 years. Well, speaking of winter, up next we'll revisit today's noon report feature, Real Answers, with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Today's topic, coping with those post-holiday seasonal winter blues.
In more recent times, we've heard some more proper terms put to some of this, such as SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So speak to that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, the reduced light, natural daylight that we have in these parts here in the wintertime definitely has an impact on people. Over the course of, we'll say, the past 20 years, it's become more evident. And they've actually, like you just alluded to, has given it an actual disorder name, seasonal affective disorder. And I would say to some degree, most people are probably impacted by it. Or, to one degree or another. You do have folks that really enjoy wintertime, and then, believe it or not, Mark, there's actually a subset of folks that have seasonal affective disorder in the summertime.
I'm married to one.
Okay.
Anything above like 60, she gets increasingly unhappy. So she embraces winter. So yeah, it's not everybody.
Yeah. There's not that many people that do say that they would prefer to have the dark, gloomy days of winter over the bright sunshine of summertime, but they're out there.
I guess in our region here, mostly primarily in New York and Pennsylvania, where we get winter in spades, as it were. It's the worst problem here. It's not just weather, though, is it?
No, a lot of it has to do, again, like I said, you get the hustle and bustle of the holidays, and then, of course, after that, there's a big slowdown right afterwards. But then, a lot of people are like, okay, come on, spring, let's get those brighter, sunnier days back. back. It's not entirely winter. Again, it's just kind of a change in the activity levels, and there's not as much going on immediately after the holidays. So there's a lot of factors that really kind of play into it. But the amount of daylight, the amount of sunny days, in theory, is a lot less, obviously. In the wintertime, we don't have the several days in a row of sunshine, and that really, it's that natural lighting and people's lack of exposure to it is probably the primary driver of seasonal affective disorder.
You're listening to Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature here on the Family Life Report. I'm here along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're singing the winter blues, as it were. So what are some good practical ways to tackle that, Chris?
Well, one thing you want to do is you want to maintain your communication and your contact with other folks. Continue to go to church. Continue to, if you're involved in small group ministries or other activities for your church, just maintain that structure, maintain that contact with others. That is really important. You don't want to, you don't want to isolate. If you do have a hard time with some seasonal depression, you definitely don't want to isolate and keep yourself away from others. Maintain your activity level, maintain your daily routine, because that right there is very important. That keeps you going. And then also, if you can get outside on a day that is a little brighter or a little sunnier and a little bit warmer. I know that's been hard to do this January. This has been a very cold January.
Yeah, for sure.
Try to get out and get some of that natural sunlight reflecting off the snow into your face. They say even as little as 15 minutes can have a noticeable impact on your mood levels. Getting that fresh air as well. We tend to stay inside, and stagnant air can also not be the healthiest thing in the world. So get outside, get some fresh air, and also exercise. If you belong to a gym or otherwise you like to put on the cross-country skis, the snowshoes, or just walk up and down your road a few times just to keep your activity levels up, those are things that are all going to make a big difference.
Chris Anderson, that's part of today's Real Answers feature, heard on the Noon Report. You can subscribe to, listen to, and share Real Answers and all of Family Life's original podcasts at Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or, of course, at FamilyLife.org. Your nightly market report is up next, brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Wall Street closing with stocks lower this afternoon after the Federal Reserve announced it was leaving interest rates right where they are. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says they're going to play it cautious for now as inflation remains a little high for their comfort level. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 136 points to 44,713. The S&P 500 dropped 28 points to 60,39. And the Nasdaq gained 101 points to 19,632. Faithward Advisors, a Christian financial planning firm helping faithful stewards do more. Details are available at faithwardadvisors.com. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
If you get sick or suffer an injury, a hospital emergency room may not be the best place to go. Hi, I'm Rob West with a Faith and Finance Minute. Now, let me stress that with life-threatening emergencies, you should go to an emergency room. But many people head to an ER with conditions that could be treated quite well at a different type of facility and at a much lower cost. Urgent care facilities, often called walk-in clinics, can handle non-life-threatening emergencies such as a small cut or a mild sprain, and the cost is typically about a tenth of an ER. So find out where your nearest urgent care is and learn what types of illnesses and injuries they handle. That way, you can make a prudent decision if you or a loved one needs quick medical attention. Connect with a certified Kingdom advisor who's been trained to deliver financial advice that aligns with your Christian values by visiting our website, faithfi.com.
Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, New York's scholastic kingpin owning the sport that's right up his alley.
The call for tonight, partly cloudy, much colder than last night with scattered flurries. Still a bit of lake snow in parts of the area overnight. Travel prepared. Narrow bands of lake snow could still deposit an inch or two in some spots east and southeast of Lake Erie and Ontario. Low temps teens. For Thursday, a few early lake flakes. Otherwise, a fair amount of sunshine, high in the 30s. Our next weather maker is a broad area of low pressure that's fairly substantial and moist. It will bring rain, ice, and snow Friday and Friday night.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at 5, Jacob Tirado is New York State's and America's new kingpin when it comes to high school bowling, scoring the greatest bowling performance in high school history during a recent match in New York's capital region.
I was just in shock after I did it. I didn't really feel it until a little bit later that day because my body was in such shock. It's pretty meaningful because, what else can you say about breaking a national record besides wow, I really just did that.
He really did. 35 strikes in a row. His only spare was the very first frame of the 3-game set on his way to that new national record of 890. Oh, and the bad news for the other schools out that way, he's only a junior. And that's the world we live in for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.